Circles. We are here today from the Yarn Inspirations team. We have Catherine, one of our designers from Yarn Inspirations, and I'm Allie W. I'll be helping moderate the class today. We are so excited to be teaching the Crochet Cactus Garland. And while we give everybody another minute to join, feel free to ask questions here in the chat. If you have any questions throughout the class, I'll make sure that we get them over to Catherine. And just as a reminder, if you haven't been in one of these classes before, all of the classes will be recorded and available online. This class should be available by Tuesday online. So we're excited to get things started today.
All right, thank you so much, Allie, for that introduction. So, as you mentioned, we're working on the Crochet Cactus Garland, which is worked in Lily Sugar and Cream. And this is a really fun, quick project. It's really easily customizable. You can make it any length you want. We've given a suggested length and number of stitches to chain for the final product. But yeah, you can make as many motifs as you'd like. And it's rated as an easy project, so it's probably not ideal if you've never crocheted anything before. If you're at a point in your crocheting where you're learning a little bit about shaping, doing some simple increases and decreases, this is definitely a great project for that, as it really shows how the decreases work and the increases as well, particularly when you're shaping up that cactus. So to begin with, I guess you can highlight my hands, that would be great. Okay, so to work this up, what we're recommending is, as I mentioned, Lily Sugar and Cream, and you'll need 3 shades. So we've got Hot Green, Tangerine, and Sea Breeze. And the cactuses are worked in this Hot Green, the roses in Tangerine, and then finally the cord that joins them all together is worked in Sea Breeze. You don't need large quantities of any of these yarns, 1 ball is fine. Okay, so for this, I'm not going to worry about doing a gauge swatch. I think it's fine with small motifs like this to just jump right in. And as always, for this type of pattern, you'll note that we do have written instructions for the cactus here and for the rose. But for this type of pattern, I really love working in part from the diagrams because you can really see that it's almost like a blueprint of what your finished work is going to look like. So it's really useful. If you're not understanding, why am I working a decrease here, for instance, you'll see, okay, I'm making the cactus's arm bend by drawing those 3 stitches together. So since these are little motifs that need to hang from a garland, we are working with a pretty small hook. It's a 3.5 millimeter hook. Which gives you a sturdy shape that maintains its shape when it's hung. So I'm going to start here with the cactus. And what's important to note with the cactus, if you've never worked this type of pattern before, is we have our starting chain of 14 stitches here. And we're working as normal, so 1 single crochet and second chain from hook. But you'll see once we get to the end of this chain at the bottom, we're working around the bottom and coming back to the top to work in an oval shape. And then you're slip stitching down around and working extra chains to make those arms on the sides. So it's a little bit tricky, but it's a good project to learn to experiment with shaping. Because if you do make the full garland as recommended, you're making 9 little cactuses. So hopefully by the 9th cactus, you're an absolute expert. So I'm just going to work my starting chain, 14 for the cactus. Make sure I'm in frame. So it is quite a small hook size for this yarn. Again, that's what gives it such a nice dense look. So I've got my 14 chains there. And so I'm doing 1 SC in the second chain from my hook. So not counting the loop that's already on the throat of my hook. And I'm just going to keep working single crochet down the length of that chain. And so I'm coming towards the very last chain. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to work those 3 SC in that one single chain. Oh, pardon me just one moment. Sorry about that. So I'm working 3 single crochet in this final chain. And I'm using that to turn. And so now I'm working up the back of my starting chain in those loops that have been unworked. So it can be a little bit tricky using this smaller hook, but once you've worked your first round, it does get easier and the yarn gets a little bit more pliable as it's manipulated. So I'm just working single crochet stitches along the back of my chain. And I'm seeing some requests for explanation. So I can start this over again. If you'd like, that's not a problem. Maybe I was going too fast. Okay, so I'm making these cacti, which start with a chain of 14. Again, if you haven't crocheted at all, like if you're struggling with, say, a slip knot or single crochet stitches, this probably isn't an appropriate project. So I'll start by doing my chain of 14. Just got that a bit tight. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I've got my starting chain oriented the same way as this little cactus diagram here. So the chart. So if I go back to the instructions, I'm going to work 1 single crochet in the second chain from hook, remembering that the first chain on the throat of your hook doesn't count. You're working into the second chain, as that's going to act like the starting chain at the beginning of a row. So it's just giving you a little bit of height to work into that first single crochet. So that with most of our patterns, that first single crochet at the beginning of a row or around that chain one to give you your height, it doesn't count as a stitch. And I can go over that one more time. We do have a Crochet 101 video, I believe, that you can refer to if you are really struggling with chaining and a slip knot. So simple slip knot, make a loop, draw it up, put it on your hook and secure it around the throat. Not too tight as I just did, or it makes it too hard to work into. And so to chain, just as a refresher, pull it through that loop 14 times. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. And so I'm now working into the second chain from my hook. So this is the first chain right here. So I'll work into this second chain. And I'm just doing a single crochet. So inserting my hook into that first stitch, drawing up a loop, yarn over hook, draw it up again. Now, one thing that you want to be mindful of for this type of technique is you do need to work into the side loops of your initial starting chain. Some people like to work into the bump on the back of their starting chain, and that's not going to work ideally for this because you're working in an oval around the entire chain. So make sure you're working into the loops on the side and you should be good. So I'm just going to continue to do single crochet the rest of the way down. And just note, we do recommend that this is worked in a smaller needle size, or hook size rather, than we recommend on our ball band. Normally, we recommend a 5mm hook for Lily Sugar and Cream. So this is at a 3.5, it's a little bit tight, which is good because you want it to have really full stitch definition. But it can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of not splitting your yarn when you're working with a hook this small. So being mindful of that, I'm just working down this starting chain. So these are just standard single crochet. It should be pretty straightforward. Okay, and so I've worked now, I'm coming around the bottom here. And so what I will do in my final chain at the bottom is I'm going to work 3 single crochet, as you can see in the diagram, and that's going to bring me around from the left side to the right side of that starting chain so that I can work in an oval. So by working 3 single crochet into this final chain, I'm essentially turning. Oops. I'm working my third. And now I'm going to work up the back side of the chain. So these unworked loops that you see along the back here, you're going to work into those. And what I like about doing this too is what I will try to do as I go up. I've got my starting tail here at the end of my work. What I like to do when I'm working this method where I'm working back up a chain is I try to crochet around my starting tail, and that's my sneaky way of hiding it so I don't have to weave it in later. I don't know many crocheters that rate weaving in ends high on their list of favorite activities. So I think any trick to get rid of weaving in ends is a good trick.
Hey, Catherine,
Yeah.
could you scoot your hands up a little bit more in the frame? Yep, like upwards towards your iPad, I guess.
Oh.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I apologize that I do move out of frame sometime. I'm very short with poor eyesight. So it's not a great combination with my little T-Rex arms. But
I can absolutely understand that as well.
Okay, and I'm getting back around to the top. And I'll do 2 single crochet in that last one and join with a slip stitch. And so since I'm pretty satisfied with how well that tail is in my work now, I'm just going to snip that off to get it out of my way. Okay. So I'm beginning with a chain 1. And I'm going to do 2 single crochet in that first stitch. And then 1 single crochet all the way back down to the bottom. So I'm just really building up at this point on the existing shape that was established in that first round of work I did. Now that I get back to the bottom, instead of working the 3 single crochet in 1 stitch, like I did the first time I turned, you're doing 2 single crochet in each of those stitches that you worked in that terminal stitch the first time around. Because it's a slightly larger curve now that we've built it up a bit. So you can see it's just rounding off that end of it for us. And then again, I'm just going to do single crochet all the way back up now that I've turned that corner. So this is a super fast project to work up these individual motifs. And Allie and the Michaels team were talking at the beginning of this video about how fun making these little motifs would be. And it would be great for like embellishments for like a baby shower gift, or even, you know, maybe slightly unorthodox Christmas tree ornaments. These are fun little ideas to whip up for any occasion. I always love having something small like this to work on too, as like a palette cleanser between more difficult projects. If I'm frustrated with the sweater I'm working on, it's nice to maybe churn out a few adorable things to remind me why I love crafting.
And a desk project. I don't know if many of you are able to, but obviously we're very fortunate to where
Yes.
we won't get in trouble if we stitch at our desk at work.
Yes. I can't imagine ever going back to a job where I can't crochet and knit through every meeting. Okay, so I'm gonna do I've done 2 single crochet in my second to last stitch, and now I'm going to do 2 in my last and join with a slip stitch. So there I've got the basis of my cactus. And this is where it gets a little tricky or a little bit interesting depending on your perspective. So I am going to slip stitch into the next 6 stitches. So I'm trying not to add any additional bulk to the project at this point. I'm just getting to where I need to be so I can make this arm on the cactus. And you can customize this if you want. You can put as many arms in as many places as you want. Okay, and so now that I've slip stitched down, I'm going to work a chain of 8, just right off the side of this. And I'm going to treat that just like a regular starting chain. And you'll notice too, again, this is why I love charts for this type of project. So you'll notice here, essentially when I work my double crochet, they should be facing down, as that's the way you're going to rejoin it to your project. Okay, so I'm going to do a double crochet into my 4th chain from hook. And you'll want to keep this pretty tight if possible. And so that counts as my first 2 double crochet. 1 double crochet in the next. Sorry. And then to get that cactus arm to form that almost right angle, I'll work 4 double crochet into the next chain. So that's bending that little arm for me. And I have 2 chains left before I get back to the body of the cactus. And I'll do 1 double crochet in each of those. And so now I'm going to join the bottom of the arm onto the side of my cactus. And you can see here that I'm essentially skipping 2 single crochet and working a slip stitch in. And that's really going to anchor that into place. You can always work a few stitches in at the end to really secure it. So there, I've got 1 little arm now. And now what I need to do is I need to make my 2nd arm. So I'm just going to slip stitch all the way around the bottom until I'm just a few stitches lower than where I did my 1st arm on the adjacent side. So you're just slip stitching around again. You don't want to add too much bulk to the cactus, or it'll be too wide. But one great thing that this round of slip stitching does is it really makes a nice clean edge, and it does make your cactus stand up a little better.
There is a question here about what to do if the arm is curling. They wondered if it's because they're not using cotton yarn, or what could be the issue there?
If it's curling, sounds like it would likely be a tension issue. You want to make sure that you're working with a hook that's a little bit smaller than what is recommended to go with your yarn. So again, this is This is a 4, it's a medium weight. It's kind of a light worsted weight. And so we've gone from a recommended 5mm hook to a 3.5mm. So I guess I'd want to be sure that I was scaling down in the same proportion my hook for the yarn that I've chosen. So going down a good 2 to 3 sizes might remedy that. That said, whenever I have anything that curls, I usually try to give it a good shot of steam to force it into submission, and that often works. The reason that it is a cotton yarn is cotton yarn does have a bit more body than acrylic. So if you are making this out of a synthetic yarn, you might find it helpful to give it a light starching like you would a shirt collar. I know that's what we do with some of our craft projects. But I'd look at your tension first and foremost, as that's likely going to be where the issue is coming from. Okay. And so I've come up around the bottom and I'm going to work another chain. Okay, I'm going to do a chain of 11. 1, 2, 3, 7, 10, 11. Okay. And again, I'm doing 1 double crochet into my 4th chain from the hook, counting as my first 2 stitches. And I will be doing double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Sorry about that. Okay, and so to create this right angle, the same effect, I'm going to do a double crochet 4 together. So yarn over hook, insert into the chain, drop a loop. Do that 4 times. And then this can be a little bit tricky because it's a tiny hook and kind of thick yarn, but I'll do 1 final yarn over hook and draw it through all of those tightly. And then just 1 more double crochet in that last chain there. And there we go. So it's bending the same way. And I'm doing the same thing I did on the opposite side, skipping these 2 stitches and anchoring my cactus arm in the 3rd stitch from the last stitch I worked in the body of the cactus. And now I'm just going to keep slip stitching around until I've gotten back to the beginning. So once you've worked all that way back around, just join it to your first, out of control here. Join it to your first slip stitch and then just fasten off. And I would probably take my tail and I might secure the little arms of the cactus in those 2 stitches I skipped. but it does work up super fast and it's very cute. But my favorite part of this pattern, I've got to admit, I really like the roses, and I think they're really pretty, and they're a really great idea, not just for embellishing like gifts or as ornaments, but they're a fun idea to even put on other things like a scarf or a hat as a little, you know, a little point of interest. So these are a little bit different than the cactuses, and I really love this technique. So we'll start as we did for the cactus with a starting chain. Put on the slip knot, and I will chain 27.
That was 27 chains, right?
27, yes.
Perfect. Don't ever interrupt the counting person. We know that.
Okay. And so I'll do 1 double crochet in my 4th chain from hook. And then I'm just working double crochet all of that way along. So while I'm just doing that double crochet, if there are any questions, this would be an ideal time.
Sarah just wanted to confirm if you should double crochet in each chain after the 4th.
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. And please let us know in the chat here if you have any questions, or if there were any questions that you missed that we didn't get to earlier. Feel free to just pop them in the chat here, either to everybody, or you can private message them to me, and I will make sure that we can get them over to Catherine.
You'll see these little roses pop up in a lot of our patterns on yourinspirations.com, just as small accents. I think my favorite use of them, other than this garland, is we have a princess sleep sack that features a little bouquet of these roses on the top, which is just really sweet and adorable. Okay. So this is all just double crochet in every chain until the final chain, which I believe is it's an HDC. Final HDC, and I'll turn. I'm starting with a chain 3 by turning chain. And so this is the row where you're actually making your petals. So in each of my first 3 stitches, I'm doing 3 double crochet. And when I'm working this row, I try to make sure that my stitches are maybe a little bit tighter, as that's what's going to really help coil the leaves and make them, or the petals rather, and make them look distinctly like petals. So again, 3 DC in each of the first 3 stitches. Okay, so I've done my first 9 double crochet, 3 into each of the first 3. And what I'll do now, and this is what is shaping your petal, is I'll just do a slip stitch in the next stitch. Again, I try to pull that kind of tight. And now I'm going to move on to my next double crochet, and I'm going to do the same thing over again. So I'll do 3 double crochet, 3 double crochet, 3 double crochet, slip stitch, and I'm going to continue in that fashion all the way to the end of my row. And so as you'll see, it's already starting to form like a crescent-y petal shape. So there's one set of 3. Two sets of 3. Three sets of 3 stitches. Then again, just another slip stitch in that next stitch to kind of force it into a petal shape. And this is a fun technique too that you can do a bit of experimenting with. If you want maybe a slightly more voluminous flower, you can integrate treble crochets into it and do more stitches, but it's a fun basic technique to learn. Because once you understand this little bit of shaping, there are a lot of potential applications for it. So I'm working on my next petal, doing those 3 sets of 3 double crochets each stitch. Shaping it with a slip stitch. And continuing in the same way for the remainder of the row. hair in there. Sorry about that. So I've done 2. I need to do 1 more for this petal, 1 more set of 3. And shape that down with the slip stitch. So I'm getting towards the end of my row, and you can see it's starting to take shape a little bit. And this won't truly come together though fully until you've done a little bit of seaming at the end. Okay, almost to the end. Final set, double crochets. And then my last slip stitch, and I'll fasten off after this guy. Okay, so that's what I'm left with. And what you'll do, this is where sewing is a little bit important, is you're just gonna kind of experiment with it and figure out how you like to have it sitting. So you'll just coil it up. In a way that you find aesthetically pleasing. And then you'll take your ends and you'll just make sure that you're getting through all of your layers. To really anchor that into place. So I usually start with a couple of kind of long running stitches through the center, knowing that I'm catching each layer. I can do a couple more if they're necessary, but if I've caught them all on the first pass, then I'm good.
Does it matter if you're coiling the front side or the wrong side?
It doesn't really matter. I just be consistent. I think I coiled that with the wrong side showing, so it just means I can tell by the way my bees are lying. So whatever you prefer, just I would say be consistent about it. With that said, probably nobody would notice if you did it the wrong way other than another crocheter who is very critical, but. So then what I'll do is So I'll just take my other tail, weave it through to the center, just through all of that bulk, making sure it's not showing on the face of the little rose. And I'll just knot it off. And then weave in the ends through that back. And so you can kind of play with it as you're coiling it to get it to lie the way you want it to, but that's pretty satisfying effect for not too much work. Now, when you get to the point of assembly, it's really straightforward. So it's all simply connected with a chain, with a crochet chain. It's really not too involved. So I'm using this Sea Breeze shade. And it starts with a chain of 20. So I've got my first set of 20, and all I'm going to do is with the right side facing, I'm going to catch the very top stitch of my cactus and work into that, and then chain another 20.
Karen had a question here on if you used a smaller hook and crochet thread for the roses, would they work?
Just 1 second, 1920. No. Okay, no worries. Yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing might be is obviously they're going to turn out kind of miniature at that point. So what I would do if I were using a really small hook, I'd probably want to change the pattern a bit. I'd add additional rounds and an additional starting chain, unless you want it to be really microscopic. But I think you could get a really great effect, especially with the rose if you were working with crochet thread. If you added, say, an extra repeat or 3 of 4 starting chains, and then maybe worked another row after this where you were doing maybe 3 double crochet into here, that would make it really, really voluminous. I think that could be really beautiful. And so now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but into the top of the rose. And it doesn't matter too much where you pick it up. And then that's how I attach it to the garland. And you'll just keep doing that, working 20 chains between each item to make your little garland. So I don't know if there are any other questions. We do have a little bit of time left.
Let me see if I've missed any. My internet went out about midway through the class, so if there's some questions that I missed, I can't see them.
Okay.
So if you asked a class before 4:20 or a question before 4:26, and I didn't get to you, please let me know here, and I'll be sure to cover it. I apologize. I missed it. Technology is just so wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think this pattern in particular, if you're somebody who's been adverse to charts, as I know I was resistant to charts as when I started crocheting. This is the type of project that really sells you on charts because it is such a nice literal blueprint of what you should be doing.
Question here about if you could just briefly cover the diagram symbols.
Absolutely. Okay, so there will be a stitch key with all of our charts. And they're pretty literal, I guess. The chain kind of looks like a chain. The little black dot indicates a slip stitch. The shorter stitch is a single crochet, and then the taller is a double. And so when we're doing our charts, we'll always indicate where exactly you should start reading that particular chart, like where your beginning is. So here you can see, okay, you've changed your 14 here, and that 1 indicates that's where you're starting. So you're starting working down. And so our charts will always run counterclockwise if they're in the round. Yeah, so you can see it's very literal. Like there's a single crochet in your chain and then a single crochet in your single crochet. It makes it pretty easy to read your work because you can really tell where you are. And so just be mindful of the diagrams that you're interpreting each stitch correctly, but each stitch symbol should be distinctive enough that they're not easily confused. So it is really uncanny like how literal of an interpretation that is. So once you know which symbols to identify with which stitches, you're pretty well set. And we do try to make it even clearer for you. Every alternating round is a different color. So we alternate black and blue in between rounds. So you'll know this row 1 is black, row 2 is blue, row 3 is black again. And that way you're not accidentally confusing rows. And so it's the same thing here. Our first row and starting chain are all in that black. And then you can see where we've started with the blue for the second row. So I'm not sure if we have an extensive tutorial on how to read our charts, but it is definitely something that you should take the time to learn to do for little things like this in particular in granny squares. It makes it much more easy to discern where you are in a pattern, because crochet text can get, even though we do our best to truncate it enough so for ease of reading, it's easy to get lost in this big body of text. And I find that that is so much more clear once you understand the semiotics of it, I guess. So maybe in the future, Allie, we should do a full
Yes, I definitely think so. I think a full hour on charts and maybe even a full hour on abbreviations, because I know that's something we get questions about every class. So, and certainly if you have an idea or a class that you'd like to see, please let us know in the chat, and we'll think about that. Natalie wanted to know, was it a slip stitch where you picked up the cactus top loop and the rose top loop?
Yes, it was just a slip stitch. So you just want to catch that top loop a little bit so that it looks relatively seamless. Like you don't want to be adding depth with a single crochet there. So it's just a little slip stitch.
Wonderful. Could you just talk through the curve on the second cactus arm a little bit?
Yeah. Maybe I will do it again. So you're starting out, that one was a chain of 11, I believe, for that arm. 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. And so for that first double crochet here, you're working into the 4th chain from your hook. Going to work into each of the next 2. And then to get that bend, because you want to draw everything in, you're doing a double crochet 4 together. So yarn over hook, draw up a loop in the next stitch, draw through 2. Yarn over hook, draw up a loop in the next stitch, yarn over, draw through 2. And twice more. So once I've done that 4 times, I draw it through all of the loops on my hook. And you'll want to make that kind of tight. And then you have 1 more double crochet to work in that final stitch. And so you can see that the act of bringing those 4 stitches together produces that bend. And it's sort of the opposite thing that we were doing on the other side. We worked 4 stitches into 1 stitch to have it curve that way. And so since we're working upside down, essentially we bring 4 together to create the same effect, if that makes sense. So we're just using increases and decreases to work very literal shaping into it. So I think projects like these are a great idea before you get into big complex, garments or even amigurumi or things like that, because it really teaches you exactly how your shaping is going to affect your work. And it makes it so much easier to read your work and so much easier for you to write your own patterns in the future too and create your own designs. So I hope that was clear enough. But
Yes, they said, thank you so much. My cactus is no longer lopsided.
Excellent. Glad to hear it.
Awesome. Well, so just as a reminder to everybody, all of the classes that we've done in the past are available online at michaels.com/classes. And then future classes that you'll be able to sign up for are available online at michaels.com/online classes. I'm going to drop the link here in the chat for you. And be sure to check out what we have listed in the next few weeks. We have a bunch of great classes, a bunch of different projects. So definitely something that should be able to suit anybody's interests. But thank you all so much. And thank you, Catherine.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for joining me. I'm so excited that I see some completed flowers in the audience. I saw Renee did a beautiful job. So that's really exciting.
And Radha, great job there. Oh, so cute.
Yes.
Great, amazing work. Oh, I just saw you said thank you. That's such a, we should make this be a thing for every class, I think. Yes. Show us your finished project or show us what you've accomplished. It's great. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And we definitely look forward to seeing you in another Michaels Community Classroom. And thank you, Catherine.
Oh, thank you, Allie. Have a great weekend.
Awesome. Bye, everybody.